Hey guys, it's Mr. Moth here. As you could probably tell from the start of the video, today we're going to be reviewing Little Nightmares. Before I get into the actual rating, it probably isn't a bad idea to go over a little bit of background about the game. The game Little Nightmares was developed in 2017, so yeah, I'm a little late to hop on the trend here. The game is pretty much available on any platform that you want to play it on, and surprisingly enough, this includes iOS and Android. As the game begins, you play as a little girl named Six. She's having a nightmare in which a masked woman turns around and looks at her. When she wakes up, you're in a suitcase in a place called the Moth. Basically, your goal is to escape this Moth, and the only thing you have to help you is a lighter. Each area in this game has its dangers, including the janitor, the chefs, the guests, and then finally, the lady. As you solve each puzzle to escape the Moth, you have to deal with threats like starving and leeches. All of the people I mentioned before belong to their own distinct level, so I think it's probably appropriate to assess each level on its own. Starting with the janitor. The janitor's level was a challenge. I constantly was underestimating how long this man's arms were. Of course, with him being blind, the key to passing this level was to be quiet. And I mean completely silent. Because he cannot see you, but he can hear you very well. Ironically enough, some of the most difficult parts of that area of the game were parts where the janitor wasn't even there. For example, when you were climbing up all those cages, I for some reason just could not make that jump, and I died several times over the course of half an hour before I had to come back and try again the next day. I honestly don't know why that part was so hard for me. Moving on from difficulty, the music in this area of the game was some of the best. It just added to the overall eeriness, making this short blind man a whole lot more scary. Now moving on to the chefs and the kitchen area. This part really shows you why you're here and why there are so many kids that were in cages before. I liked how if you got caught by the chefs, they immediately did something with you. Like you were bound to be in the kitchen at some point anyways, so why not get it over with now? To me personally, this was definitely not the scariest part of the game. I actually found this part funny because you could mess with the chefs while they were doing their jobs, but most of the time they couldn't do anything about it. Looking back on it now, the music in this area of the game wasn't all that memorable, but I did really enjoy the puzzles. The way they had you running all over the place to do one thing was really enjoyable. Oftentimes I would run past something, note that I might need it later, and then eventually figure out how to get to it. Once you do eventually leave the kitchen, you move on towards the outside of the ship and you are introduced to the guests. Now this part was by far my favorite part of the game. There are a few reasons for this. Number one being the music. When you're outside of the ship, climbing up that chain, and you see the guests as they're walking in, it's ominous and just perfect.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything.
Number two is because of the pacing. This part is very fast-paced as you dodge people's hands who are literally trying to eat you alive. This level specifically is why I say there is danger at every turn. On your first playthrough, you can't tell which one of these people are going to get out of their seats and chase you, or rather try. And the only way to get past it is by going straight through the danger, which I loved about this game. There isn't much time to think, but there's this feeling of dread as you realize what you're going to have to do. Once you get past the guest area, you approach the ladies' quarters. This part is definitely a challenge, but it's very fun.
She might have one of the best final boss soundtracks I've heard in a very long time. Once you get to this point, there isn't as much climbing and crawling as there was in the previous levels. One piece of advice for those of you who haven't played the game: don't let her see you. Actually, don't let her hear you either. If she notices that you're there at all, you're screwed. That's just the way it is. There's no helping you, and there's no escape. Good luck. It took me a second to realize how the mirror works once you get to the final part of this level, but once you do eventually beat the lady, you beat the game. That's it. That's the end. The important part about this is what comes after. Everything about that ending sequence was just amazing. It changes Six from a little girl that was running from monsters to a complete badass. That's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to spoil anything. Alright, technically we are at the end of the game, but there is DLC content that I played, so I'm going to review that too. I'll give my final out of 5 review at the end. In this part, you play as a character known as the Runaway Kid. Instead of a lighter, you are given a flashlight. This part is divided into 3 chapters: the Depths, the Hideaway, and the Residence. In the Depths chapter, you have to avoid a creature known as Granny. She is underwater and tries to drown you. Similar to 6, in the Hideaway, your character faces the janitor again. In the Residence, you yet again face off against the lady. Starting with the Depths, this part creeped me out, primarily because the main antagonist of this area reminded me of Gollum. Its long arms and thin strands of hair were just unsettling to me. Hearing this creature tread water behind me was also not very appealing. Other than the boss of this level, I had a hard time not electrocuting myself in water at every chance. One of the main reasons this part of the game took so long was because I kept getting electrocuted. Moving on, once you get into the Hideaway, it's not particularly difficult, it's just a very large puzzle. It takes a very long time to get all the materials and all the resources that you need to move on to the next spot. And it's the first time where you're really blocked in by something that you can control. During this level, I think you gain a little bit of respect for the gnomes that you see throughout the rest of the game. And while you do see the janitor throughout the level, he's not really all that much of a threat. You have to avoid him still because you don't want to get picked up. But I really wasn't scared of the short man like I was before. You spend most of your time in this level gathering coal, which shows you how the ship is run in the background. Once you do get enough coal, you are able to use an elevator, which enables you to move on to the next level. That next level being the Residence. Now, just like the janitor, she wasn't a big threat throughout the puzzle of this level. But this was still by far the most frightening level in the entire game. And I say this purely because of the shadow kids that can be seen running around and laughing in the background. There's nothing creepy like a bunch of dark children-like figures with white masks laughing and watching you from behind statues and books. This level by far took me the longest out of the entire game, because the puzzles here weren't as obvious as the ones before. You knew that you had to do something in a room, but you didn't know specifically what. It ended up getting to a point where I had to look for a walkthrough on YouTube. Yes, I am ashamed. The ending to this level was quite unexpected, but still good nonetheless. It's the scenes that come after that are not for the faint of heart. A few pieces of the puzzle start coming together in ways that you don't want them to. But after this, that's it. That's the end of the game. In my opinion, it's an enjoyable experience from the start to finish, regardless of how difficult things may get at times. And there were only a couple times where I wanted to throw my mouse across the room, so that's a good sign. I think in total, I'd give this game a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5 stars. If I had to choose my favorite out of the original content and the DLC, I would definitely choose the original content. That does not mean that I don't think it's worth playing through the DLC. The DLC is definitely worth your time. And overall, I had a ton of fun playing this game. I have Little Nightmares 2, and I look forward to playing it. You guys will be seeing some content on that very soon. But until then, thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments. I am constantly looking for new ways I can improve. Also, let me know if you have any other ideas for gameplay. And if you want to be notified every time I upload, go ahead and press that subscribe button. I'd appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.